Good afternoon, everybody. I am Peter Bell, and I am part of the Openreach CIO, and it's my role to ensure that Openreach choose the right technologies and develop those technologies in the access network. And I was talking to a colleague earlier today, and I said, this is my first broadband forum. And I've been in the industry 20 years, and you may ask where have I been, and it sounds like I've been missing out. So I'm really excited to be here because I can have a look at all the new technologies. And I think one of the characteristics and one of the views of whether a technology is successful is if it's rolled out in volume. And if it's rolled out in volume, that's goodness for the operators, because presumably they're getting some revenue associated with that. And it's goodness for the vendors, because they're getting paid for the equipment that's deployed. And that's what I'm here to talk about. I'm going to talk about Openreach, Openreach's deployment, its scale of operations, its pace of deployment. Okay, so just to give you a view of the contents, I'm going to talk about two of the key success factors for Openreach's deployment: open access and generic Ethernet access framework. Then I'm going to talk about where we are with the current deployments in Openreach. And then I'll give you my view what the key recipe is to ensure that you drive those deployments at scale and volume. And I'll give you a little teaser on what we're doing in the more challenging rural regions before I then close off. Okay. So just for a refresher, for those who are unaccustomed to the UK deployments and the UK network, I'll give you a refresher about Openreach. Openreach was formed in 2006, and the main reason for that was to stimulate at a higher layer competition for the network services. So the main role of Openreach was to create an equivalence of input, an equivalent way in which CPs, communication providers, or service providers can purchase access service connectivity. And it was to stimulate the competition at the higher layers. That was in 2006. And the results speak for themselves. There's been huge competition for broadband and voice services in the UK. Some of the numbers there, 9 million lines of LLU. And there's been huge growth in the Ethernet services, creating that access pipe to customers from service providers. And indeed, it saw the advent of NGA, the next generation access solution that Openreach offer, and its superfast fibre broadband story. If you look at the UK, it's got one of the highest broadband availabilities, and it's got some of the highest speeds in the whole of the G8. So pretty successful. So I mentioned open access earlier. What do we mean by open access? And this slide's trying to depict that. It really means Openreach sells its infrastructure service to CPs, communication providers or solution providers. They then provide the CP, then gets the service the CP gets from Openreach can range from passives to LLU to superfast fibre broadband. The CP then sells on to the consumer, adds their value and sells that onto the consumer. So the relationship with the end user, the end customer, is with the CP, the communication provider, not Openreach. Openreach has a relationship with the CP. And the CP purchases from Openreach in an equivalent manner. All CPs get the same treatment, same terms and conditions as each other. And that's really what we mean by open access, open to all communication providers to buy those access infrastructure services. So, where are we with the NGA deployments for Openreach? How well are we doing? I said it was successful. Is it successful? Yes, it's very successful. We spent £2.5 billion developing the network capability. In 2010, we said we'd passed 1.5 million customers. By February this year, we said we'd passed 13 million customers. And recently, we just announced we passed 16 million customers. And we're on track to deploy to 2/3 of the UK by 2014. A huge investment, huge civils engineering structure, 42,000 cabinets, for example. Huge amount of investment in terms of man hours. And we're doing very well with that deployment. But we haven't rested on our laurels. As well as rolling out at that scale and that volume, we've also been innovating on the platform, which is why I'm really keen to see some of the technologies today. We've done a number of innovations over the rollout, probably the most notable being the the bandwidth uplift from a 40 megabits per second product to up to 80 megabits per second product for FTTC. We've also ensured we can have multicast on that network so we can deliver TV services over the infrastructure. And we've also started developing capabilities like fiber on demand in our FTTC areas. And I'll resonate with the previous speaker. We've got FTTC and FTTP. And I'll give you the second key success factor. It was generic Ethernet access. So it's a framework in which CPs purchase from Openreach a look and feel to the service and a connectivity which is Ethernet, which is the same, independent of the underlying technology. So independent whether it's FTTC, whether it's FTTP, and moving forward as we use new technologies, it'll look and feel the same. That means the developments for the CP are minimized and it looks and feels the same when they come to operate it. Okay, so that's where we are with the deployment. That's a success that we've had to date. What do I think is the key recipe to that success? What is it that's meant that we can do that at pace and in volume, as you've seen? And I think there's three main ingredients. Arguably, there's three. If anybody wants to buy me a beer in the bar, we can have that argument, but I would say there's three reasons. And I'm going to talk about each of those in turn. The first, it's Openreach's investment on the wider industry, on creating a market and stimulating that market to ensure we've got an ecosystem. And this is one example that I've got on this slide. This is Openreach's website. And I said earlier, Openreach hasn't got a relationship with the consumer, the end user, the punter, me and you. It doesn't. But this website gives the consumer information about what the benefits are of superfast broadband, where they can get their service from, what sort of speeds they can expect. And if this consumer wants to, it can click through to get the service, not from Openreach, but from our CPs, our communication providers. And it allows them to choose from a whole host of service providers, communication providers, and again, it's that open access. So that's open to all the communication providers who want to purchase superfast fiber broadband from Openreach. That's one area where we've been supporting the ecosystem. Another area is where we've been working with our CPs. So we work collaboratively, we work hand in hand with them. We've had huge investment in forums where we look at all aspects of the communication provider service to their end user and how we provide the service to our communication provider. So examples of that, we have operational forums where we look at how the service is performing. We also look at future products and future developments. So we can work hand in glove with the design, the development, and then deployment of that capability. And we ensure we're lockstep in terms of those developments with our CPs. We have process walkthroughs. We even have been to some of our communication providers' operation centres to support them and support their staff so they understand what the service looks and feels like. And it's supporting this ecosystem which is the first ingredient. The second ingredient is ensuring our workforce are skilled and tooled up to do the job. And there's some examples of this coming. In May 2010, for example, we took 3,000 engineers to Birmingham NEC. We set up some mock customer premises, and we connected the real network into each of those customer premises. We then took our engineers through the training and development they needed in order to do a customer provision of FTTC service or FTTP service. We did that in May 2010. We've continued that, but we took 3,000 engineers through that training over a week period. We also have employed some ex-armed forces personnel to support our fast and flexible resources, and we can flex the workforce appropriately. Those are two areas. You won't be surprised to hear me saying we've got a 24/7 ops dedicated team in Bristol. It's in Bristol, so I won't disappoint you and say we do have 24/7 ops. In fact, I'll let you in a little secret. There's a couple of the guys in the audience today, so I hope the office isn't empty. But we have 24/7 ops. Not only that, in that operational centre in Bristol, we have a mock-up of the network. So the teams there not only will see the monitors and the screens of what happens, they can go and have a look at the physical kit and the mock-up of that physical kit so they get a greater enhanced understanding of what's going on in the network should any issues arise. That's the second ingredient. And the third ingredient, and by no means the least, is the operational support system. Since the advent of Openreach, we've invested heavily in our operational support system in order to manage the volume, the sheer volume of transactions that go through Openreach from our CPs. It's been invested since 2006, as I said. It's been it provides a business-to-business gateway in order for CPs to order circuits for customers, services for customers, amend services, do line checks so they can check whether the services are responding okay, and also a check on the service overall. It also allows us to manage our workforce. We have automated distribution of work to our workforce, and it also allows us to provide the orders in an automated fashion to our suppliers. And it's been a huge investment, and that's the third ingredient I would say that you need in order to have a recipe for scale. So the three ingredients were the operational support system, were the workforce, and what was the first one? See if anybody's awake. Rob, shout it out. Supporting the market, the ecosystem. Okay, so we've said we're on track to deploy to 2/3 of the UK by 2014. What next for Openreach? Well, we've been very successful at getting intervention funding in order to deploy to the final third. And those final third tend to be territories which are pretty difficult to get to. And we've been very successful in those bids. In order to do those regions, we will build on the two key success factors that of open access. So any deployments there, any CP can provide the service to the consumer. And we'll also use the same generic Ethernet access in order to provide that. So we might use underlying different technologies, but it'll be under the framework of generic Ethernet access. So what sort of technologies are we looking at? Maybe a few more after the next few days. But we're looking at technologies like wireless to the cabinet. So where we've got terrain where it might be prohibitive to deploy fibre, we might use a radio link to provide it back to the connectivity point for CPs. We're also looking at the potential for wireless to the premises. We're also looking at things like NG amplifiers and broadband regenerators. And we're also doing a number of civil engineering works like re-engineering the copper network in order to provide the services. So there's a whole host of things we're doing there. Okay. In summary then, I would say Openreach should be synonymous with three things. The open access, which creates that stimulant for the market. The successful deployment of NGA to the two-thirds of the population, and also driving to deploy to the final third. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you.